In this video, we're going to continue to build out our user and task models as we explore two very important topics. The first is data validation, and the second is data sanitization. So with validation, we can enforce that the data conforms to some rules. As an example, I could say that the user's age needs to be greater than or equal to 18. They need to be an adult. Data sanitization allows us to alter the data before saving it. An example of that would be removing empty spaces around the user's name. In this video, we're going to explore both of those topics, allowing us to create a more fully featured model. Right now, we just have the basics, the most bare bones version. Let's go ahead and kick things off with some basic validation. Now, we can explore how to get all of this done and more by checking out the Mongoose docs. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. The Mongoose docs are not the best docs in the world. I often find it a bit difficult to track down what I'm looking for, but hopefully by me pointing you in the right direction, you'll be able to learn what's covered here and figure out how the docs work so you can use them in the future to explore other features. Now, when it comes to validation, we have a validation guide over here in the left-hand side, which is going to work us through some of the basic validations we can perform. The first is going to be to set up some of our fields to be required. So by default, we don't have to provide all of those fields when creating a new instance of a model using the required validation. We can enforce that certain fields have to be provided while others could be optional. So down below, if we scroll down to built-in validators, we can see that all types have the required validator. So we can use this for anything, booleans, numbers, strings, and others, and it works a little bit like this. To customize the field further, we just provide other properties on the object for the given field. So here I'm continuing to customize the name field for user, and all we do is set required equal to true. So now, when I'm creating a new user, I have to provide a name, but I could choose to leave the age off, since I haven't set required to true for that. Let's go ahead and explore this. I'm going to comment out the task creation and task save method call down below, and up above, I'm going to bring our user back into the mix, and we're going to go ahead and customize that data. To start, I'm just going to remove all properties altogether. So we're going to try to create a new user with 0 assigned fields. Then down below, I'm going to go ahead and run the program, and I would expect this to fail. If I do run the program, we can see that things did indeed go wrong. Now, it can be difficult to parse this error object, but the long and short of it here is that we are indeed getting an error for name and we're not getting one for age. We could go ahead and prove that further by actually just providing name. So right here, I'm going to provide the name, setting it equal to something like Mike. Once again, I'm not providing the age, which I shouldn't have to do. And if I rerun the program, it all works as expected. Once we dive a bit deeper into the Task Manager app, you will learn how to parse that error object to get useful messages out of it so the user knows what actually went wrong. In this case, we've decided to make name required while making age completely optional. Now, it's going to depend on what exactly you are working with. Sometimes all of your fields might be required. Other times you'll have a mix of required and optional. Now, if we head back over to the Mongoose documentation, and we keep looking at the built-in validators, we can see there's not that many more. Numbers have min and max, which is a bit limiting, though nice, and strings have a few different, but none of these are really going to provide the sort of validation you'll be looking for in a real application. For example, is this field actually storing a phone number? Is this a valid email? Is this a credit card number? Things like that. Mongoose wasn't supposed to have all of those built in, but it does provide us with a way to set up custom validation, which is going to allow us to validate literally anything we'd like. So we can go ahead and set up a custom validator for a field using the following. Right here, I'll go ahead and set one up for the age field, and all we do is provide validate. Validate gets set equal to a function. I'm going to set my function up using that ES6 Method definition syntax we explored earlier, and we get as the first argument the value we're validating. So if I'm expecting it to be a number, I would get that number right here. Then I could run some validation on it. As an example, let's go ahead and make sure people can't enter negative numbers for their age. So right here, what we want to do is throw an error if there's a problem with the value. So I'm going to check if the value is less than the number 0. If it is, this code right here, our code block is going to execute and we'll be able to throw an error with the error message. So throw new error using the JavaScript syntax for that, and we can provide our message right here. Something like age must be a positive number. Perfect. Now that we have the message in place, we're not going to allow negative ages into the application. Now, since we did make age optional, it's okay, once again, if you don't provide age at all. Let's go ahead and test that out. Right here, I'm going to shut down the script. I'm going to start it up again, and we can see that things do indeed work. It's only when I do provide an age that it's going to be validated. Right here, I'll provide -1 as my age, so setting the age property equal to -1. I'll go ahead and save the program and rerun it, and hopefully things do indeed crash. Right here, I'll rerun the script, and what do I get? I do get a long error object printing to the screen, and if I scroll up a bit through that output, we should be able to find our message right here. Age must be a positive number. So while Mongoose does not provide a ton of built-in validation, we can indeed customize it to fit our needs, in this case, making sure that the age is always a positive number. Now, when it comes to validating more complex things like emails, phone numbers, social security numbers, and others, it's typically best to use a well-tested library that already handles all of that for you. And there's a very popular NPM library for this. If we Google NPM validator, we're going to find the NPM validator package page. We're going to click over to that, and this is the package I recommend checking out for more complex validation. It's a super popular package with about 1.5 million weekly downloads, and it allows us to do all sorts of interesting validations. If we scroll down through the documentation, we can get to a list of all validators. They have things for email as an example. I have is credit card sitting right here, is currency. If I keep scrolling through, we have is email and other various formats we might want to actually validate. For example, hex colors, hashes, ISP addresses, and others. So the validator library is your sort of one-stop shop for that sort of thing. Let's go ahead and install it and actually use it in the application. Over in the terminal, I'm going to shut the script down. I'll run npm I validator, and we'll grab the latest version, that's 10.9.0. And once we have this installed, we're just going to require it, and we're going to set up a new field for the user. We're going to set up an email field, and we're going to enforce a valid email address. So down below, things did install correctly. Let's go ahead and actually integrate it into the application. First up, let's go ahead and load it in. So up at the very top of the file, what I'm going to do is import it, const validator. And we are going to require the library validator, which we just installed. And down below, we can set up an email field. So right here, I can set up email, the value being an object, and then we can customize that field. I can say the type is a string. I'm also going to set required equal to true for this one. You have to provide an email address to register. Then down below, I can set up my validate method. I'm going to set up validate as a function. And as we already know, we're going to get the value right here. And we're going to use that validator library. So all of those methods we explored in the NPM documentation, those are all accessible right on the validator object we got from require. So is email, as an example, just takes in the string email and it returns either true or false. So right here, we can go ahead and use that inside of validate. What I'm going to do is set up an if statement. And once again, if this if statement runs, we're going to throw a new error saying that things are not valid. And the message we can use for that is email is invalid. Perfect. Now, under what conditions is the email invalid? Well, we're going to use validator. We're going to access the is email method it has accessible to us, and we're going to pass the email in, which is stored in value. So right here, this is going to return true and throw the error if the email is valid. We want the opposite, so I'll use the logical not operator to flip that Boolean value from either true to false or from false to true. So if we provide an invalid email, is email is going to return false. We're going to flip that to true to cause the if statement to run, and we're going to throw the error message. Now we can actually test this out. Down below, let's customize our user. I don't need to provide the age, so I'll take that off for the moment. I'll set email equal to Mike at, which is an invalid email. Now I can go ahead and rerun the program and make sure we do indeed get our custom validation message. Right here, let's go ahead and do just that. I'll use the up arrow key twice to cycle through those previous commands. I'll use enter to run it, and what do I get? I do indeed get the error object printing, and if I scroll up a ways, we can dig into the actual message. Right here, email is invalid. So being able to use the custom validator is going to allow us to define our own logic, or we're going to be able to use other libraries that have predefined logic to validate things that are a bit more complex. There's no need for us to write code to validate things like emails, as there are so many edge cases that we're going to have to work through, and we'll spend more time writing validation code than we'll actually spend writing code specific to the task manager application. So the theme of this class, as you probably picked up on, is write code specific to your app and use NPM modules when you're doing something generic that other applications need to do as well. There are a couple of other things that Mongoose can do for us, though. Let's go ahead and check these out before we move into the challenge part of the video. For this one, we're going to head over to the Mongoose documentation once again, and we're going to go to schema types in the guides sidebar. Now, if we scroll down on this page, we can view all of the types available to us. We've already used string, number, and Boolean, but we have others we'll be using later throughout the class. We will eventually use date to track the date when things happen. We'll use buffer to store profile images for users. We'll use object ID and array as well. Now, if we continue to scroll down on this page, we're eventually going to get to a list of options available to us. Here we can see required, which we already used, and validate, which we've used as well. What I want to point out for just the moment is default. We can also choose to set a default value for a field should no value be provided. You set default equal to the default value to use. So if it's a string, I could set default equal to anonymous, and if someone didn't provide a name, anonymous would be used. If I was working with the task model, I could use default to set the Boolean completed value to false, which makes sense. Now, if we continue to scroll down, don't worry, we'll use default in a second, we're going to get to string-specific options. Here we have some ways we can sanitize our data. We can use lowercase, uppercase, and trim to manipulate the string before it's saved. So I could convert the email to lowercase first. I could use trim to make sure I remove any empty spaces before or after a given value, like a user's name or a task's description. And we can see some of the other options we saw as built-in validators before. So this page gives you a nice rundown on all of the things you can actually use. Let's go ahead and use a couple of them over inside of our application. Then we'll move into the challenge part of the video, where you're going to continue to customize the application by customizing the task. To get started, let's go ahead and add trim onto name, making sure someone doesn't have a bunch of spaces as their name. We want to get rid of any of those leading or trailing spaces, leaving us with just the actual value. So right here, trim, true, perfect. Now that's all we're going to do for name. Let's move on to email. So for email, right after required, though the order isn't important, I can go ahead and also set trim equal to true to make sure I'm trimming spaces before or after. I can also go ahead and use lowercase by setting that equal to true to convert the email to lowercase before saving it. Last up, we have the age. Now for the age, we don't have to worry about trimming, that is string specific, but I could go ahead and set a default value since this field isn't required. I could set default equal to 0. So if you don't provide an age, we'll use 0. If you do provide an age, we're going to validate it to make sure it's a positive number. So being able to use those properties gives us just a bit more control over the data we're allowing into the database. Let's go ahead and demonstrate all of this by just saving a new user one last time. Now over in Robo3T, if I go over to the users collection and refresh things, we have a few different users we've created. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of them, right click and delete those documents. And over inside of the editor, we're going to update the user data. So we have the model definition up above, which is now getting pretty real world. And down below, we have our data. So for name, what I'm going to do is add some spaces, followed by my name, followed by some more spaces. For email, I'm going to go ahead and use something like my email in uppercase at mead.io, and I'll put some spaces after it. And then finally, for age, we're not going to provide it at all, and we're going to see what the end result is. Down below, from the terminal, we can use Control-C to shut things down, up and enter to rerun the program, and we can see our data right here. These spaces have been removed from name. I have an age value of 0, and my email has also had those spaces removed, and it's been converted to lowercase. So being able to have Mongoose do that for all of the data we save is going to make sure the data we save is consistent and valid. Now, as is my style, this one's ran a bit longer than I wanted it to as well, but it made sense to talk about all of this at the exact same time since they are all closely related. You are going to have a challenge where you're going to have to use this stuff inside of a Mongoose model, but I'm going to make that the next video. So let's go ahead and jump right in to that challenge video.